So as was already discussed a bit, we have two main charges for this capstone. One is to create a set of policy recommendations that are realistically, but again aspirationally, to be adopted by the New York City government, and also to create a campaign and toolkit in order to affect behavior change as the overall goal, with reducing consumption of animal-based products in New York City. So animal-based foods in general refer to dairy, meat, and poultry products, with eggs in a lesser degree, because there has been some research that has shown that eggs have a higher greenhouse gas emissions footprint, but overall climate footprint has been lower. So cool foods in that sense are those that have lower greenhouse gas emissions than animal-based products, and those include vegetables, legumes, and grains. So we want to urge the New York City Mayoral Task Force to adopt these policy recommendations that we are proposing here, as well as a campaign and toolkit, in order to not only exhibit leadership in taking charge with this movement of establishing this connection between food and climate change, but to reduce our ecological footprint while also creating a culture of cool foods consumption.
So the connection between livestock-based foods and climate change isn't always immediately obvious, but if we look at the resource demand that is required for livestock-based foods and compare that to the resource demand required for plant-based foods, it starts to make a little bit more sense. So these slides here have been adapted from data that Gidon Eshel, who's a climate scientist at Bard College, has compiled. He spent a lot of time trying to help bring to light this connection between livestock-based foods and climate change. And so here you see the resource demand of various livestock-based foods relative to the mean of the plant-based foods. So on the far left we have plants, and that's a 1-to-1 ratio, obviously. And then going across to the right we have beef, poultry, pork, dairy, and eggs. Over here on the left is the greenhouse gases associated with those various foods, and then on the right is the water demand associated with those foods. So greenhouse gases kind of makes the most sense when we think of climate change. We think of greenhouse gases, that's what's actually causing climate change. But water is also an important consideration. By 2025, it's estimated that 2/3 of the global population will be living in water scarcity. And anytime that we're using more and more resources, use of those resources requires energy. Now, historically and currently, that's been found in the form of fossil fuels. So any kind of added resource use is essentially going to contribute more to greenhouse gas emissions. Going forward, we see also that these other foods, these livestock-based foods, require drastically more land to produce than do the plant-based foods. And they also require other forms of resource demands, such as nitrogen. Again, all of these added resources are going to be found, utilized, extracted, shipped using, at least currently, fossil fuels. So they all kind of contribute to the greenhouse gases associated with these various foodstuffs.
So why should New York City replace animal products with cool foods? Well, in 2007, the New York City made climate change a priority with the initiation of Plan YC, which is an ambitious plan to reduce the city's greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. Very recently, the city has incorporated food into the most recent update of Plan YC, thereby acknowledging the significance of food and the necessity of including issues surrounding food in its efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, the issue of animal products was not mentioned in this food section in Plan YC, and therefore, given the 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from the livestock sector, more needs to be done on the subtopic of food. Reducing animal products in New York City could significantly reduce the city's carbon footprint, and doing so will secure New York City's place among other innovative cities such as San Francisco and Ghent in Belgium, which have taken similar actions and remain in sync with recent findings on sources of global greenhouse gas emissions. As New York City is a global city, it must remain a global leader in addressing environmental issues by making these changes. So, there have been multiple efforts by municipal leaders in New York City to improve the food system which address various issues of public health, food access, and sustainability within the food system. And these reports include Scott Stringer's Food NYC report, Christine Quinn's FoodWorks report, and Bill de Blasio, the food permit resolution, which was introduced but was actually not voted on, which was introduced by Bill de Blasio when he was a council member, a city council member. And however, in these reports, changes regarding animal products were either not mentioned or were recommended but were not effectively implemented. In efforts to improve the New York City food system, the issues of animal products must be taken into account, not just to address climate change and other environmental issues which affect the food system, but also to address issues of public health and food access that are inherent in the food system. And I'm Andrew Bablock, and this is Carrie Weiss, Megan McGowan, and Emily Gilbert. And we are the group who is focused on determining policy solutions to replace animal products with cool foods and thereby reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with animal products.
All right. So in line with the mayor's Plan YC goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions that originate and are associated with New York energy production by 30% by the year 2030, we have developed the long-term goal of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions associated with animal product consumption by 30% by 2030 as well. And we've taken sort of a three-faceted approach to developing our policy measures. So all of our policies can fit into one of these three categories. The first category is the development of a Cool Food Systems Assessment, or a CFSA, which will attempt to develop a baseline measure of animal product consumption in New York City and the associated greenhouse gas emissions with that consumption. The second set of measures are aimed at improving access to cool foods, plant-based foods in low-income communities where access is often limited by either monetary or geographic restrictions. And the third set of measures aims to facilitate change in our food consumption through educational institutions and programs, meaning we would like to change the sourcing of food for public schools and for after-school programs, all while educating on the importance of a largely plant-based cool foods diet. So we're nowhere if we have no idea what we're eating in New York City. The first set of policy measures that we propose are the development of the Cool Food Systems Assessment and the Cool Food Systems Assessment Task Force, which will aim to develop a baseline measurement of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with animal product consumption in New York City. It's more complicated than you might think. Our food comes from many different places, and it's even if we know where it comes from, it's been difficult, and many people are working on it, but it's been difficult to determine what greenhouse gas emissions are associated with different foods produced in different places. This task force will be an interdisciplinary task force. It'll be made up of city agency officials. It'll be made up of professionals in in food sourcing, supermarket owners, restaurateurs, professionals from Hunts Point, as well as other community organizers that are concerned with food issues, food justice, and maybe even health. They will aim to identify opportunities within New York City where animal product consumption can be greatly reduced and replaced with a large cool foods consumption. In addition, these policies that they recommend will aim to be efficient and cost-effective, such that they will be easily and justifiably picked up by the mayor's initiative and be easy to implement.
So we've decided to focus primarily on low-income communities. There are many SNAP beneficiaries in the New York City population. SNAP means Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and is basically a food stamp program. We plan to try to influence local management of electronic transfer benefits, the actual cards that people use for food stamps to redeem them. There are also a large number of community organizations in low-income communities that can be a jumping off point for explaining to them the concept of cool foods and how they can influence their local decision makers as to how to keep cool foods in their communities. There's also an issue of justice. There's a role of structural constraints in food deserts, which lead to health and societal implications, as well as have a huge connection to climate change.
The health and societal implications of food deserts can be immense, both for the individual and the community. Currently, 3 million New York City residents live in areas that are constituted as food deserts, and some health implications of food deserts include obesity, obesity-related diseases such as diabetes and heart disease, learning and developmental deficiencies later in life, and then in connection with that, 700,000 New Yorkers, or about 8% of the population, currently suffer from diabetes. However, in East and Central Harlem, well-documented food deserts, rates of diabetes have risen to 12% and 13% respectively. And then in addition to this, we can see that last year, New York State spent $6.1 billion on obesity-related illnesses, so we can see that the costs are tangible. And again, there's also a climate change connection. Fast food chains account for the majority of prepared food eaten in food deserts, with meat products being the majority of the food sold at these chains. In addition to this, McDonald's is also the #1 purchaser of beef and pork products worldwide, and the second purchaser of poultry products worldwide. And then in a study conducted by Stockholm University that took data that was provided by The Economist, we found that Americans, if the entire population of the United States ate 50 hamburgers each year, or about 1 hamburger per week, this could potentially release 65,250,000 metric tons of atmospheric CO2 annually.
So we have 5 proposed policy initiatives to reduce food deserts in New York City. The first one includes increasing farmers markets that accept SNAP and WIC benefits. We also propose increasing community-supported agriculture, which is a cooperation between a farmer and a consumer, where the consumer pays upfront for a season's worth of produce. This way, the farmer is able to cover their upfront costs, and the consumer gets a season's worth of produce. We also propose the expansion of the Healthy Foods and Healthy Communities Fund, as well as the expansion of the Food Retail Expansion to Support Health Initiative. These are both initiatives that have been trying to put supermarkets into low-income communities. We also propose the expansion of the New York City Green Cart program. Green carts are mobile produce carts. And also, we propose the initiation of the Farmers Market Cool Nutrition Pilot, which will incentivize the purchase of plant-based products while de-incentivizing the purchase of animal-based products monetarily.
So, as a supplement to our focus on low-income communities, we propose changes to educational institutions and programs. As we see, well, more specifically, New York City public schools and the after-school program. As we see these as having the potential to influence a large number of people of diverse backgrounds. So, there are 1.1 million students in New York City public schools, and just over 640,000 students who participate in the after-school program. And therefore, changes to public schools or the after-school program have the potential to influence the eating habits and therefore the health of a large number of these school children. In addition, there are potential positive effects on public health on a large scale, as cool foods are strongly correlated with being mostly healthy foods. In the public sector, we recommend the facilitation of advocacy by parents, teachers, students, and administrators for cool foods in schools. To accomplish this, we recommend that wellness committees, which are an extension of parent-teachers associations, be made mandatory for each parent-teachers association and therefore for each New York City public school. We also recommend that school food partnerships, the school food partnership meetings, be made more accessible and convenient to these parties who have a stake in New York City schools. Furthermore, in order to educate parents about the link between animal products and climate change, we recommend, as part of our initiative, to form alliances with various nonprofit organizations, including those under the New York City Foodprint Alliance, in the Foodprint Resolution, to create a network to spread knowledge about the benefits of choosing cool foods over animal products. We also recommend that cost-effective changes be made to the Department of Education procurement policy, which will be in accordance with the findings of the previously mentioned Cool Food Systems Assessment. And also, in the most recent update of Plan YC, under the solid waste section, there was one recommended change that procurement policy be edited to reduce solid waste. So this is one potential entry point where food procurement could be changed.
Given the constraints currently facing New York City procurement and Department of Education policy, there's a strong potential for after-school programs to play a powerful role in raising community awareness and also having positive impacts on the communities with whom we're trying to reach. Currently, 56% of New York City's children come from low-income communities, and studies have shown that low-income children would benefit significantly from increased after-school presence with increased adult supervision, safe, structured environments, and academic help. Additionally, a survey conducted by the New York State After School Network found that if there were enough after-school programs to meet current demand, we could potentially put 57% of New York's K-12 population in after-school programs. And then in discussing the procurement issues that face DOE, procurement and after-school programs is very much less constrained. They have to adhere to USDA nutritional policy, and there is no set list of vendors, unlike the DOE procurement policy. So we could potentially choose vendors who are practicing and promoting environmentally sustainable education, and also choosing their food coming from environmentally sustainable sources.
So what you can see here is that we worked very closely within the constraints of New York City government, the powers of the mayor's office, and sort of the existing programs that exist within New York City to increase access to healthy foods, and we've sort of retooled this effort to focus towards cool foods, plant-based foods. What's very important is this Cool Food Systems Assessment, without which we won't really know where we stand, what the climate impact of our food system is, and how it will be reduced over time. We've also aimed to increase monetary and geographic access to plant-based foods in low-income communities, both by reducing the size of food deserts, but also through monetary incentivization of the purchase of plant-based foods over animal-based products. And finally, we do have this set of policies that aims to educate young New York students through public schooling and after-school programs, all while feeding them cool foods at the same time. In addition to our policy proposals, we have a few proposals that can be adopted more immediately by the mayor's office. Firstly, the mayor, similar to what he's done for the Plan YC launch in 2007 on Earth Day and the Plan YC 2011 relaunch, the mayor's office should hold a large press event, sort of to gain excitement, to heighten excitement in New York City about adopting a cool foods diet and reducing animal product consumption. Furthermore, the mayor's office should release redrafted mandatory nutrition standards. So the mayor's office, in concert with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, has put out standards for feeding employees and guests within municipal facilities, so at meetings and other events. These standards should be redrafted so that they account for cool food consumption. They reduce animal product-based foods and increase the amount of cool foods served. The mayor's office should revise the mayoral challenge for 2017. So, in accordance with Plan YC, municipal buildings will aim to have a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2017 rather than 2030. We believe that this challenge should be adopted in the terms of animal product consumption by those same New York institutions, educational institutions, colleges and universities that have adopted the mayoral challenge. Finally, the mayor's office should establish the Eating for the Green Apple campaign office, which will be in charge of developing and dispersing resource materials on this issue and maintaining this effort over the long term.
So, the second part of our presentation will focus on the campaign and toolkit that's been developed for the Eating for the Green Apple campaign. I'm Megan. This is Ashwini, Ariel, Olivia, and Nate. We've been working on this all semester. So basically, the campaign is going to be the first point of exposure, most likely, for most New Yorkers to our initiative. And therefore, this first impression is extremely important. Over the semester, we've researched a variety of different existing campaigns, both within the New York City context and within a broader context, in order to familiarize ourselves with the techniques and marketing strategies employed by various organizations suggesting these issues. So one that we looked at was the Pouring on the Pounds campaign, which many of you might have seen around the subways here in New York. This is both similar in scope to our own project, as well as offered us lessons in messaging and format, and gave us some initial parameters for budget estimates for our own project. This is known for its visceral images that evoke an immediate reaction from the viewer, that hopefully then prompt them to check out the website to develop more information.
Meat, as it is a very touchy subject for many different cultural demographics, and we did recognize that when we were developing this campaign. So instead of playing on specific cultural demographics or narrowing in that format, we decided to play on those deep values, right? Community, ethics, responsibility. Those kind of values that are largely accepted by all sorts of demographics. And another precedent that we did look at was the London Healthy and Sustainable Food Report, which had two iterations. One, which was just the mayor's strategy, and then the other, which was the implementation strategy specifically designed to create a set of actions for individuals and communities to take on, which is very similar to what we're trying to do. So that gave us a framework to operate under with food systems, although we did have to narrow down and focus specifically on animal-based products.
Question. Did you know that in terms of global warming, addressing global warming, driving a Hummer is actually better for the environment than eating meat? That's a pretty startling fact, and people don't usually know that. So the point of our toolkit is to make New Yorkers aware of the role their diet has on the climate and to give them simple actions they can take to reduce their impact.
To find what kind of methodology we should use to compose our toolkit, we looked at a few different kinds of toolkits, both from the public sector, so from nonprofits, and also from government agencies. So we looked at the New York City Greenhouse online toolkit, the Cool Foods Campaign toolkit, and also one on 350.org. And we discovered that there's a very visible difference between the two different approaches. The nonprofit tends to use language which engages and empowers the user, while government recommendations have a less exciting tone. Neither type of toolkit tended to have specific actions that individuals can use to combat the issue at hand. So we wanted to provide specific guiding actions that we hope people will be more likely to take on, so that they become more involved in the campaign and involve their communities. And using the research, we've developed a toolkit that engages the citizen in a direct and personal way, while also maintaining the tone of authority that is expected from a government document.
Now, to just take one more moment to reiterate the purpose and audience of our campaign and toolkit. This is targeted towards all citizens of New York City. It's meant to be inclusive rather than exclusive. The purpose is to encourage behavioral change. We want to increase consumption of cool foods while decreasing consumption of animal-based products. And finally, our campaign and toolkit are both supported by the policy measures designed with the same objectives in mind. With that being said, we've developed a three-faceted approach, the first being poster-based awareness and distribution, which would be displayed in subways, bus stops, and buses. Also, we're seeking to develop partnerships with grocery stores in the local area, as well as a campaign website, all meant to educate and inspire behavioral change. So these are some of the poster prototypes that we have developed. They feature a person intended to represent a typical New Yorker, as well as a fact that stresses this relationship between climate change and animal-based product consumption. Now, we purposely did not depict any particular specific food on the plates, so that we're not vilifying any hamburger or specific product. And also at the bottom, you'll see the live link to our website, which is up and running at the moment.
And you'll also notice the posters around the room, near the food stations and also on our podium. So the other distribution tactic that we did adopt is developing partnerships with grocery stores around the city. And the purpose of this is so that you would have the campaign poster and a pamphlet of the toolkit, in addition to a flyer of some sort that has on the top of it, what kind of cool foods do I want to see in this grocery store? So the consumer who walks into the store is able to write, interact with that flyer. And that produces three main benefits. One, it allows for the consumer to tell their grocery store manager what exactly they want to see in that store. Two, it allows for the grocery store manager to know what their consumers want. And three, and perhaps most importantly for us, is that it provides quantitative data in that we are able to see how many people have interacted with the campaign, and qualitative data in that we are able to see what kinds of cool foods the people in these specific demographics desire.
And the final part of the campaign will feature the website, and here's the home page. We seek to establish an information portal here with a lot more elaboration upon these issues, as well as an interactive platform. We really want to foster this online community where visitors can contribute to blog posts, submit brief videos of why they consume cool foods, as well as contribute to future cool foods recipes. It's also another way that we can track the number of visitors and hits and see who's interacting with our campaign. Here's a screenshot of the additional resources page of the website that will feature a more in-depth fact list relating to these same issues, as well as a list of books, reports, similar organizations, and a list of documentaries for further exploration into these issues. And finally, here's a screenshot of the Cool Foods Recipe Index. This is meant to be eye-catching and appealing. It's in a food blog style format to really motivate people to start cooking, which is another huge part of this campaign. It's going to feature vegetarian and vegan recipes that are actively linked to their original source. Also, it'll also have an abbreviated part of the toolkit, which is the 8 actions for an empowered New Yorker, as well as a shopping guide, meal plan substitutions, an event calendar for community gatherings, and a downloadable PDF version of the Eating for the Green Apple toolkit.
So the toolkit, as you can see here, supplements the Eating for the Green Apple campaign by giving individuals specific actions that they can do to reduce their meat consumptions, thus reducing their contribution to climate change. Throughout the toolkit, we refer to non-animal derived foods such as vegetables and legumes as cool foods, as we do in the campaign, to draw attention to the fact that these foods contribute less to climate change than animal derived foods. It's a catchy way to tell the user that the toolkit that they can eat foods that have less of an impact on climate change.
In terms of distribution of the toolkit, they'll be placed in physical form in the supermarkets that we've established partnerships with. Also, you can find it on our website in PDF form, or if an individual or institution wants, they can call or email the campaign office and get them sent in bulk in physical form. We've intentionally excluded the use of the terms vegan and vegetarian. They're kind of confrontational terms, and we want to emphasize a reduction in animal-based foods consumption and not a complete elimination.
So the first section is the introduction, but then the second section is the livestock industry and climate change. And it reiterates what individuals can learn from the website and the campaign as a whole. It gives users a scientific basis for why a diet with more cool foods and fewer animal-based foods will reduce their impact on climate change. As you can see here, the picture shown is an excerpt from this section of the toolkit. We explain that GHGs from producing various foods can be put in perspective by comparing them with emissions from a gasoline-powered car that gets 27 miles per gallon, and this is a comparison to half a pound of each kind of this food.
The Stay Healthy by Eating Cool Food section. So this section dispels myths that you can't get enough protein unless you eat meat. We use facts presented by the USDA that say that peas, beans, nuts, and seeds are all sufficient in terms of protein as a substitute for meat.
These next two sections, the Cool Foods Meal and Shopping Guide and the Cool Foods Recipes, will show individuals that they can buy at what they can buy at the supermarket and how they can restructure their meals so that they can easily transition to a more cool foods-based diet. We believe that this is a necessary component because we saw that multiple toolkits did not contain specific enough action. So individuals were then left with information about needing to have a certain type of eating habit, such as organic or local, but no information about how to make this transition. And this should bridge that gap, helping New Yorkers smoothly transition to a cool foods-based diet. Furthermore, an action that we stress in this toolkit is cooking. So this section will help the users cook more with cool foods.
So this is the crux of the toolkit. 8 actions for an empowered New Yorker. So the main component, eat cool foods. You know, if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, eat foods with smaller carbon footprint. How do we do that? Grow your own food. For under $60, you can create a hydroponic window farm and grow food year-round. Talk to your grocer about cool foods. We really want to emphasize the importance of expressing your wants and needs to the places where you get your food. Prepare your own food, the best way to have control over what goes in your body.
Also, our actions include community actions because our research has shown that community actions are integral to spreading awareness and involvement in this campaign. So we've listed a few actions that New Yorkers can take in order to involve their community and get involved with organizations that work on issues related to implications of animal-based food and climate change, such as Just Food, the Real Food Challenge, which is only on college campuses, Sustainable South Bronx, and Slow Food.
So, in addition to these kind of more general actions that are accessible and applicable for all of New Yorkers, we recommend that more specific toolkits be created. So to show how that can be done, we conducted a survey here in April of this year here at New York University, and we've actually created a toolkit that is New York University specific. So this includes the 8 general actions that are applicable for all New Yorkers, as well as 4 or 5 other recommendations, such as lobbying to expand the Hayden Sustainable Food Pilot Program throughout the university. That wouldn't really make sense to offer to other New Yorkers, but here at New York University, these are kind of very, very accessible actions, and we hope that they would have the most change. It's recommended that the campaign office create other demographic-specific toolkits. So we could imagine a toolkit being created for educators, for business owners, for employees, for high school students. And each one of these would contain, again, the same 8 recommendations that are applicable to all New Yorkers, but also some more specific recommendations that those individuals can use to empower them in creating change in their own lives. We've tried to consider some of the possible opposition that a campaign like this might come to face. One of those is budget and resource constraints. We are operating within the New York City government, and as such, relying on taxpayer dollars. So we recognize that the budget is not going to be very high for this. Although we'd like to stress that in the long run, if New York City can mitigate global climate change through these actions, we believe that the long-term benefit to that is going to far outweigh the initial costs that this campaign cost at the outset. Another possible opposition that we considered is industry opposition. New York State has a pretty large dairy and cattle industry, and we can imagine that there's going to be some opposition from those folks. However, again, because we're only stressing a reduction and not a total elimination of livestock-based foods, we believe that the industry can actually handle a slight reduction in their industry, and so we hope to kind of surpass that obstacle as well. Finally, we recognize that there are legal constraints. We are talking about using city policies to influence the procurement of foodstuffs in various organizations and institutions, and that is not something that's easily done. So we've tried to work, as Carrie said, within the constraints of the legal system here in New York City. And another reason why, that's a pretty big reason why we're staying within after-school programs and within public schools, is to try to work within that framework and hopefully kind of mitigate the legal constraints that are facing us.
So with all these constraints in mind, we'd like to conclude with this idea that we do have a potential to revolutionize the way in which the food and climate change movement is conceptualized throughout the city, throughout the country, and throughout the world. This is an amazing opportunity that the New York City government should really consider taking on, not only, again, to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, but to create this culture around cool foods consumption. So thank you very much.